Okay, hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to our Maritime English lesson for our 45th week, day 2. And welcome everyone. Okay. So for today, okay, this will be our part 2 of our topic regarding a grounding. And as we all know from last week, from last Monday, we discussed about the meaning of a grounding. We discussed about the types of a grounding, the causes of a grounding, the very main cause of a grounding, and how are we going to report during and then the after incident, and then the reports. All right, so for today we will continue the discussion of grounding. So meaning this grounding topic, this is all about a ship that hits the bottom of the sea. Not just for this situation, but also in a river or in a waterway that gets stuck in a shallow area. Alright? So let's just imagine that it's like a car getting stuck on a high curve because the ground is too close to the bottom of the vehicle, like a humps. Okay, so here the part 2, we will discuss about the damage control, about how are we going to refloat the ship or the vessel, and the post-incident procedures. Alright? So, here, our lesson agenda will be, of course, the damage control operations. Okay? The refloating operations. And the post-refloating inspections. And how are we going to report? How are we going to document it? And also, after that, how are we going to restore to go back to the normal operations? And of course the Q&A, the question and answer. Okay, so for part 1, or about the damage control operations, this is how we are going to minimize, or how are we going to contain a grounding situation. Okay, the purpose of controlling, okay, the damage after the grounding. So one is, of course, to preserve the ship's buoyancy and stability. This is very important because without this, or without the buoyancy and the stability, of course we will going to have a problem. Okay, and then of course we have to prevent the water ingress or the progressive flooding, and then we have, of course, to protect the life, the cargo, and our marine environment. Okay, not just like our lives, no, the crew and then the cargo, but also our coral reefs, okay, that will be damaged during grounding. And then we have to minimize, okay, we have to minimize the support in refloating the grounding, the refloating the vessel. And the most important here is we have to provide the exact, okay, or the accurate, the precise information what really happened. Okay, now, so the immediate identification of flooding during grounding is critical. Alright? So, we need to identify, okay, the locations where there is flooding. We have to inspect the water, the compartments. We have to inspect the void tanks, okay? We have to look for the any water ingress, okay? So we have to verify physically, okay? And if in case there is what you call this, blackout, okay, we need to have a handheld lights in order for us to check the affected area properly. Alright? Now, when are we going to check the affected compartments? Of course, one is we have to check the water level inside the tanks, of course, to know if there is water ingress. Okay, we have to check it right away. So, there are sounding pipes needed. Alright. Now, of course, to allow the crew to check the ballast tanks, as I mentioned, the void spaces, the lowest inner part of the ship, or the boat's hull. You have to check that, or basically the vessel's basement, okay, because that is the very first area, okay, that is affected during grounding. You have to check the machinery spaces. Now, when it happens, or if ever there is water ingress, of course, the initial thing to do is to determine whether or how the tanks or the ballast tanks, the void spaces, how the water ingress is, or how deep, okay, how deep is the water ingress happening, like if it is partially flooded or if it is fully flooded. You have to check that. So, weak soundings uses air pressure. Okay, how are we going to detect that? By using the bubbling. There's bubbling sound, there's a hollow echo sound, there's a dull sound. Okay, that's how you are going to check the sound, okay, if you use the air pressure. And another soundings, okay, soundings must be done regularly after grounding, of course, to monitor the progression of flooding. Alright? Now, for assessing the structural integrity, here, when you say assessing, you are checking to make sure if the hull part of the vessel remains strong, okay, or it is strong enough for a refloating procedure or in a towing manner. So, the first thing the crew to do is to inspect, as I said, the frames, the bulkheads, and the stringers. Okay? You have to check the hull plating. Okay? And the bulkhead water tightness. Yes, you have to check that. And check the engine room and the machinery foundations. Okay? And then, of course, the shafts part of the ship, the rudder, and the propellers. All of this, all of this is the basic way, or the basic procedure to check structural damage. Okay? Next. So, once there is already flooding, okay, it affects the vessel's GM. Okay? The GM is the metacentric height. Alright? And then the trim, the list, and the overall stability. As I said in the first part, the trim and stability is very important. Okay? Stability, the balance of the vessel. So, in monitoring, there are important tasks needed. Earlier, I mentioned you have to check continuously the stability conditions. Okay? You have to identify the free surface effects. Okay? And then you monitor, or you just continue the update. Okay? And if ever there is an unusual, okay, movement, you have to report that again. Okay? So, you have to include the use of stability software. So, that's how you are going to monitor, to check. Okay? So, now, once there is already flooded area, or there is already a water ingress, for example, okay, now how are we going to pump the water out? Okay, now when we say pumping out, we will remove the water. Why? Because the most important here is, of course, to restore the buoyancy and the stability of the ship. Now, the crew must, okay, use emergency portable pumps, or bilge pumps. Okay? Not just a very simple pumping out of water, but you have to do it correctly. You have to suction it properly. Never ever over pump. Okay? You have to monitor the discharge lines. Okay? And then, you consider also any water or seawater contamination. Okay? And then, of course, you have to do, or you have to coordinate the pumping plan. Alright? So, this is crucial in pumping out the flood water inside any of the affected compartments. Again, you use emergency portable pumps, 1. Next is you do the pumping or the correct suction sequence. And number 3, never over pump. And then you always have to monitor the discharge lines. And you have to consider also, okay, everyone, you have to consider also the seawater contamination. And lastly, you have to coordinate with the pumping plan you made. Okay? So, here, once there is damage, okay, assuming there is already damage, we have temporary repairs to do. Okay? We have this. One method is the soft patches. Okay? Using a wood, okay, a canvas, or a wedge, or wedges for minor leaks only. Minor, minimal. Okay? But these are all temporary. Okay? Just to slow down the water ingress or stop the water, okay, ingress until there is a permanent repair facility available. Alright? This is again only temporary repairs. Now, another method is the box patches. Of course, for a larger, okay, hull openings. Okay? Of course, we do a slight pressure here. So, these two methods, again, are just temporary repairs and patching. Just until this is a temporary repairs in order to slow down or to stop the water ingress. Okay? Until the permanent repair facilities are available. Alright? So next, shoring, rubber gaskets and clamps, and collision mats. This is also a part of temporary, not just the soft patches, not just the box patches, but shoring, meaning reinforcing bulkheads or frames to prevent collapse. Yes, this one. You are just reinforcing. Okay? You are just putting pressure here to minimize, okay, to prevent the collapse, okay, of the part affected. Alright. Now, another is using a rubber gaskets and clamps for pipe leakage. Here, the rubber, and then you patch this one, you put it here, you pack, and then you clamp it. Alright, this is a sheet metal collar. And another, the collision mats. Okay, this is lowered over the side of the vessel, just enough to cover the external damage, meaning the outside portion that is damaged, okay, during a grounding. So, we have, so as I said, there are 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 temporary temporary repairs, okay, during a grounding. Alright. Now, once the vessel is damaged and there will be an oil leakage or there is a fuel tank damage, automatically there will be oil spill. And once there is oil spill, well, we will expect that there will be pollution. How are we going to avoid that? Okay? So there are preventive actions to do. You have to include, okay, to refrain from the risk of fuel leakage or oil leakage. Sounding fuel tanks and oily water tanks should be included to check to prevent pollution and oil spill. Another is the shifting fuel from damaged tanks to a safer portion. Okay, and then the rigging drip trays, you use absorbent pads, booms, and oil spill kits. Alright? Of course, to make sure there will be no overboard discharge. Okay? Because once there's an overboard discharge, automatically there is oil spill. Okay? And then, you immediately report it, okay, as per your Shipboard Oil Prevention Emergency Plan or SOPEP. Again, you immediately report it, okay, as per Shipboard Oil Prevention Emergency Plan. Okay? So that's the way to prevent pollution and oil spill. Okay. In this part, refloating operations, okay, the main purpose of refloating, okay, is one, of course, to restore the vessel movement and the seaworthiness. Okay? Because once you are grounded, okay, so it touches the bottom of the seabed, a portion of the ship. How are you going to refloat in order to restore the vessel movement and in order for the vessel to be seaworthy again? Okay, that's the purpose now of refloating. So, I'm sorry, refloating, by the way, means you are returning the vessel to a navigable depth after grounding. So, you are restoring the vessel normal movement or to be seaworthy. Okay? Of course, why do we refloat the vessel? To prevent further bottom damage. Okay? And then, you reduce the risk of hull damage. Okay? Or, of course, progressive flooding. Okay? Now, we have also to protect here the cargo. Okay? And we have to prevent environmental pollution. That's why we refloat the vessel again. And of course, the main purpose of refloating is to allow the vessel to proceed to a safe anchorage area, or of course, to the nearest port for inspection. Okay? Now, how are we going to understand more about the reaction forces of once the vessel is grounded? Okay. Once the vessel is grounded, by the way, there are reaction forces here. Okay. Basically, as I said, the goal of refloating a grounded vessel is to reduce a ground reaction, right? So, how? First is lightening cargo, or you pump out the water or check the ballast. Okay? Now, you use rising tide. Okay? And correcting the trim or list. Right? So, here, lightening procedure, okay, we meaning we reduce the ship's draft, okay, to free it from the free bed. What are the methods? As I said, discharging ballast water. Here, you pump out water. Discharge ballast water. Or the lighterage method, offloading cargo. You lessen the cargo inside the ship. Alright? So, lighterage. Or another method, the transferring of liquids. Okay, if this is the vessel 1, and then if this is the vessel 2 that is affected, you just transfer the fuel to vessel 1 or the fresh water to vessel 1. So that here, the vessel 2 which is affected, okay, will be lighter. So, it will refloat. Okay? Or another method, you remove, okay, stores or provisions. Because, of course, sometimes provisions are heavy. So, to lighten up the vessel or the ship, you remove on that specific area. Okay? So, another procedure in refloating is using tides. Okay? Now, here it says, tides greatly influence refloating operations. Yes. Okay. High tide, meaning the water is high. It provides extra depth, okay, increasing the buoyancy, right? So if it is high tide, it increases the buoyancy. So there's going to be an extra depth, okay? Now, in spring tides, it can provide the highest water levels. This is the ideal tide for refloating. Okay? And then, the planned refloating around the peak of high tide. Alright? And then, you monitor, okay, the changes in tidal range. You report or monitor your current direction and of course your speed, safe speed. Okay? Now, you have to avoid, okay, tempting or attempting to refloat during floating tide. Okay? You avoid that during falling tide. Alright. Here, the tugs, okay, tugs. This is what we call external assistance. Okay? If it is often necessary, okay, for safety in refloating, because the pulling or pushing force of the vessel, okay, should be free from any force. Alright? Now, the directional control of this is to prevent sideways dragging, okay, that can of course refrain from further damage of the hull. Okay? Because extra power of the ship, okay, it is not sufficient. Alright? It is not sufficient Because once there is grounding, isn't it that we have to reduce the speed? So, extra power to that, okay, is not good. Okay? Because you have to reduce the power. So, external assistance, okay, or the tugs are also important in refloating, for safe refloating. Alright? So, it says here that engine and the rudder are also used during refloating. Okay. It only assists, okay? But it should be used with caution. Okay? You just have to apply a low controlled power. Yes. You just have to keep the engines on standby, right? Or you use a stern propulsion movement, okay? You avoid excessive ahead power, yes, the forward power. And then the rudder angles should be minimal. And then you always check the back part of the vessel, alright, when refloating. Okay, so there are checklists in checking the ground clearance. Alright, checking ground clearance is a continuous monitoring. Okay, continuous monitoring to make sure that the vessel is actually floating and not dragging the bottom. So, you need continuous monitoring during refloating. So, what are the checklists? You include the soundings around the vessel. Now, remember the echo sounder? You have to check that. And then, you monitor the ship's motion. If it is dragging, right, the bottom of the ship, you have to check that. You continue monitoring that. Okay? Now, another, you check, okay, if the engines respond normally. Okay? And sometimes they use both teams or they use drones in checking. So you have already you have to ask for external help here or assistance. Alright. Now, in aborting or in stopping the refloating, okay, when in attempting, okay, the aborting or the refloating procedure, sometimes it is the safest action. Okay, stopping or aborting is the safest action. Because when aborting, okay, okay, you return the vessel to a safe condition. And then you reassess again the plan and wait for a better tide or maybe additional assistance. Alright? Now, you are going to abort or stop refloating when the stability becomes unsafe. Okay? Unsafe. Now, another, if the flooding increases or maybe there's a new leaks that appear. Okay? So, you have to report that right away. Okay? So, here, in order for to have a further excessive strain. Okay? That's why you have to report it right away. And also, you have to consider the wind, the tide, or the current changes. That makes the operation dangerous. That's why you have to abort it right away. And if there are also signs of ship's structural deformation. Okay? And then, also you have to abort once there's a communication breakdown. Okay? Between the teams. So, you have to abort or stop the procedure or the refloating attempts right away. Okay? Now, our part 3, the post-refloating inspections, the after, alright? After refloating inspections, okay, you have to check your main engine. You have to check the cooling systems. You have to check the steering gear. And lastly, you check the shaft alignment after the refloating procedure. You have to check all this. Alright? So, the hull inspection is an internal part. Right? It is the internal part. Here, the internal inside of the ship, you check for cracks. Okay? You check for any deformed frames. And then you inspect compartments for any new signs of flooding. That is the internal or inside portion of the compartments. Check for cracks, check for deformed frames, you check for new signs of flooding. The external part, okay, in hull inspection, okay, normally divers do that, alright, or the remotely operated vehicle. You cannot do that externally. So you have to ask for external assistance. For example, for the divers or for the ROV. Because it can check the shell plate dents if there is. If there's keel damage. Okay? The propeller and the rudder condition. Only the divers can do that. And or the remotely operated vehicle, the ROV. Because that is the outside part, the external. Alright. Okay. Stability reassessment. We are now talking about refloating here. The after refloating procedure. Why we have to check that? Of course, to make sure our stability remains safe if we are seaworthy again. You check the trim, you check the list, and the GM values or the metacentric height. Okay? If it's still in a normal height. So, you have to check that, the stability. Okay. In navigational equipment check, you have to include the ECDIS accuracy. ECDIS meaning electronic chart display identification system, if it is still accurate. Okay? Navigational equipment, because ECDIS is the system, okay, to identify your position or location if it is still accurate. And then the gyro compass error, you have to check that. Okay? And of course, your radar performance, if it is still functioning properly. All of these three, are your electronic guide of your location and or your position. That's why it is called your navigational equipment. You have to check that because this is your guide. It helps a lot. Okay? Now, for this, yes, how are we going to control? Okay? As I mentioned earlier, pollution is also dangerous. Okay? So, how are we going to follow up that one? First is you have to collect oil samples from, of course, the water. If there is oil leakage, okay, you have to collect samples. Okay. Now, you have to monitor your fuel sheen. Okay? And, of course, you have to document that, okay, whatever you found out, okay, from the samples, from your fuel sheen, you have to document that under the SOPEP, the Shipboard Oil Prevention Emergency Plan. Okay, you have to check this to control any pollution. Alright. So here, in a crew debriefing, of course, you have to discuss what happened. Okay, during the meeting or during the briefing, you have to discuss what really happened. Okay, why grounding happens, okay, or happened. Now, and what went well after, okay, after the reporting, after all the procedures you've made, the actions taken, so what went well, okay, and then what are you going to do after? The areas for improvement in order to refrain from putting the ship again in that certain situation. Okay? You have to make improvement. Okay? To refrain from happening again. Okay? So, during crew briefing, you discuss again what happened, what went well, and areas for improvement. Okay? So, next. Okay. Record keeping is mandatory. Meaning, it should be, all what happened should be recorded. Okay? From the soundings, from the flooding locations, from the details of the damage, and if ever there's a refloating procedure, the time timeline of that, record everything. And then you keep that because that is mandatory. Alright? Mandatory. Now, when are we going to report, or how are we going to report, and how are we going to document of the situation, the grounding situation? Okay, 1, you have to report that to the master. Do not keep it by yourself. Okay? You have to report that to the master. You have to report that to the safety officer what happened. And, of course, to the technical superintendent. That is the duty of the master. Now, that is internal report only. Within, okay? That is mandatory. You are obliged to do that report. Inform the master, the safety officer, and the technical superintendent. Okay. There are also external authorities. You have to report that, but the master is the one responsible to that. One is to the flag state, wherever the vessel is registered. Panama, if it is Liberia, Marshall Island, Monrovia, whatever the flag state, Korean flag, okay, you have to report. And also to the port state authorities. Okay, you have to report. And to the coastal. And lastly, to classification society. Okay? Not just internal reporting, but external reporting. External authorities. Okay. During grounding incident, there are logbook entries needed. Okay, I'm sure I already discussed this in our part 1 last Monday. Okay? You have to log everything. The time of grounding. Okay, the time. What time it happened. Position. Your location. That is why ECDIS, AIS, and radar are important because that is the system that tells you of your position. Okay? And then the drafts. You check the draft. The height. Okay? How deep or how shallow the time of grounding. And then, you check the weather and the tide. Whether it happens during high tide, mid tide, or low tide. Okay? You log everything. And, of course, what action did you make? Okay? What did you do on that specific time? Okay? So, logging everything. Or put it in writing. The time of grounding, the position, the draft, what is the weather and the tide, and what did you do? Action taken. During. Okay. During that time, you have to gather evidence. Okay? How? Of course, you take a photo. Okay? You have to collect the sounding logs. Okay? And then your VDR data. See? I said, these screenshots. Your position. Because through your ECDIS or your electronic chart display identification system, you will know if, okay, you will know your position, or in that certain position, whether you pass by a shallow water. So again, it's human error because you did not monitor your ECDIS. So you have to take screenshots of that, the ECDIS, because through investigation, they will know who is at fault here. Okay? That is why you have to collect evidences through photos, sounding logs, VDR data, and the ECDIS screenshots. Alright? Next. Okay. Now, once there's already grounding situation and it involves a major damage, insurance and PNI comes in. Okay? Now, they will check for what is affected. If there's a hull and machinery claims, if there is already a major grounding, for any cost of salvaging the vessel, if it is not already seaworthy, or there's a big damage or major damage. Not just these two, but you are answerable because of the pollution, and there are fines. Worst is there's legal problems comes in. Okay? So, grounding is not it's really not a normal accident, because major damage will be there will be consequences to that. Alright? So, we have to be very careful. Okay. Now, SOPEP, as I said, this is a shipboard oil prevention emergency plan. Okay? Once there is oil spill, you are obliged to report if there is risk. Okay? Now, they should be notified. Okay? A final report of grounding should be submitted, and then the master, okay, the master will comply all the data, what is the conclusions, and what is the preventive recommendations. So, the master is responsible to the final grounding report. Okay? Master. Okay. In restoration of normal operations, how are we going to go back to our normal situation? Okay. In this procedure, the restoration, we have to reconnect again to our systems. Okay? Once the vessel is stable, okay? Once the vessel is refloated if necessary, all the systems must be restored. Okay? You must restore the electrical power. Okay? Your pumps and the steering systems. All of this should be restored because these are all important. But that is only once the vessel is stable already or it was refloated if it's necessary. So all of these are essentials. Okay? Essential systems that must be restored. Okay. It says here that stability returned to safe limits. Yes, it should be evaluated after refloating, right? Or doing the lightening operations. Okay? The stability must be fully re-evaluated also. Not just the system, okay? Not just the system, but also the stability. Because the vessel must be seaworthy again. Of course, for the safety of everybody. And to have a normal navigation before sailing. Okay? And there are requirements for normal stability. Okay? You have to compute the GM values again. You have to recalculate the metacentric height. Of course, to have an upright stability. Okay? And then, you have to make sure that the tanks are properly secured. And not just the tanks, but also the ballasts are restored. Of course, to a normal configuration. And then, you have to verify the vessel's draught, the trim, and the heel. Okay, after that. And the last part, but the most important, is that you have to confirm, okay, that there is no progression of flooding. Okay? There's no progression of flooding. And in order for us to have a safe stability. Okay? So that is very important. Of course, to be seaworthy and safe for normal navigation before departure. Okay. Now, we have to secure for a clearance. If the port state, the classification society, and the flag state clear us or clear the vessel, okay, from any damage, or if it is seaworthy, that is the time that the vessel can depart. But if there's no clearance, sad to say, the vessel cannot depart. So, A clearance from the port state authorities, from the classification society, and from the flag state, that is the time you can depart. Alright, so clearance is very important from these three. Again, no clearance, vessel cannot depart. Alright. Next, crew health and fatigue check. Of course, everyone, it's understandable, right? Because everyone is stressed out if you are in that situation. Okay? Now, it can cause shock to anybody, or stress, or if there is crew injured. Okay, you have to check. Okay, and then you have to make sure that all the key personnel in the bridge, in the engine room, the deck officers have, of course, enough rest. Okay, and then if you comply with the STCW rest hour, okay, it requires a 10 hours rest, of course, in a 24-hour duty. Okay, and the most important part of this for checking the crew health is that you have to provide debriefing, because some, of course, are shocked of what happened. Okay, of course, to restore the confidence, and then their teamwork, and then the clarity of their minds. Okay, you have to check also the crew, because we are just all normal, we are just humans. Okay, so you have to check also, not just for the cargo, not just for the physical part of the vessel, but also ourselves, the crew involved in that vessel. Okay, now we have here establishing standard watch keeping. Okay, we have to recall the normal bridge team. Who are those? The OOW, the officer of watch. Yes, the lookout and the helmsman. If it is required, the able-bodied seaman. Okay, that is the normal bridge team. Okay, now the regular communication, you have to reestablish that. Internal communication, again, this one, the VHF, the very high frequency radio, your GMDSS, or your global maritime distress satellite signal, your radar, your ECDIS, and your AIS, or the automatic identification system should be fully functional. And of course, the engine room watch signals are operational. Okay, you have to reestablish that again. And then your standard lookout procedures, the visual lookout, your radar monitoring, your continuous position fixing, and then the use of call regs, your collision regulations. Okay, you have to reestablish this again. Your standard requirement, the standard watch keeping. Okay, back to normal. Okay, you go back to your normal status. Alright? So, here, okay, this is our learnings, no? Provided from last Monday and for today. So, we had to implement training, drills, and navigational corrective measures. Alright? And then, oh, yeah. So we will have our Q&A. Okay, our Q&A are question and answer. Of course, just checking if you learned something. So for question number 1, okay, a vessel is considered a ground. Okay, when? Yes, it's letter A. Any part of the hull makes unintended to contact with the seabed. So you are aground when a ship hits the bottom of the sea, or the river in contact with the seabed, or a waterway. Okay, and then you are stuck, okay, in a shallow area. Alright. Then, alright, for number 2, yes, which of the following is a key sign of grounding? Yes, it's letter B. It's the sudden reduction in speed. Okay, it's the sudden reduction in speed. Or you can stop the engine. I'm sorry, it stopped the engine. That is the key sign of grounding. There is a sudden reduction in speed. Okay? And number 3, what is the immediate first command when grounding occurs? Of course, it's the sudden reduction in speed also. Okay? That is the first command when grounding occurs. Okay? Or sometimes you stop the engine here. Okay? It's either sudden reduction in speed or stop the engine command. Okay. Which equipment helps confirm the ship's grounding position? Yes, it's the AIS, the GPS, or the ECDIS. Again, what do you mean by AIS? It is the Automatic Identification System, or GPS, okay, the Global Positioning System, and ECDIS, the Electronic Chart Display Identification System. So, all of these 3 are the ship's position identification. Okay? Next, number 4, 5. So, which crew member has the main responsibility for initial reporting and situational awareness during grounding? Yes, it's the OOW, the Officer of the Watch. He is the main responsible for initial reporting of the situation during grounding. Okay? The OOW. Alright. So, the primary purpose of damage control after grounding. What are you going to do? Letter B is to maintain the buoyancy and prevent progressive flooding. That is the main purpose of damage control. Okay, after grounding. To maintain the buoyancy and then you prevent progressive flooding. Okay. Which situation requires aborting a reef floating attempt? Yes, the water levels rises, and then if there's an increase in buoyancy. Okay? So you have to abort this. Okay? The reef floating. Once there's a water level increase. Okay? And then also, there's an increase in buoyancy. Okay? Buoyancy. Now, in simple words, alright, I just want to clarify. Buoyancy. This is the upward force, okay, exerted, okay, of the water, okay, that opposes the weight of the vessel. So there is an increase, okay, to that, okay, and then the water level also increases. You have to abort the refloating attempt. Alright? Now, next. After refloating, which inspection must be done first before resuming navigation? Okay, it says here the correct answer is machinery and hull integrity. So, this one, before resuming to navigation, you check your machinery and the hull integrity. That is after refloating. Alright? And then, for number 10, you have, or which statement is true about the final grounding reports? Okay? What is the correct answer here? Yes. Letter C. They must include soundings, yes, the damage details, and the incident timelines. Alright? So that is all for today. And alright, that is all for today. I'm sorry. Okay. Alright, so for today, we had finished our lesson. Okay? And I really hope you had learned something from me, and through my discussion, since this is part 1 and part 2, it's quite a long topic, but it's interesting, right? Because this is all about for all your safety. So, thank you again for today. I'm your teacher, Teacher Shelly. So, I'll see you all again a week after for another lesson of our Maritime English. So, bye everyone. I'll see you all next time. Okay? Bye.